right. Now we just wait for people to show up. Unless it's such a nice day wherever they are that they don't need to come in. Nope, there's somebody. Somebody showed up.
I'm tempted to open a window a little bit since it's a nice day, but I'm
Yeah.
sure some other noises would come in we don't care for.
Well, that window might not be a bad idea. 4 people are here. We can always close it if it turns out to be a bad idea. Hi, Mary. Hey, you're on time. Yes, you are. I have shown up on time, and you have shown up on time, and there we go. Fantastic. It's like it shows up there, but not down there, but oh well. I guess it doesn't matter. That's just YouTube and the way it does its things. Hi, Stardust. How are you doing? I'm getting better as far as my shingles is concerned, but it still hurts like the dickens. It's like, oh my. Yeah, the nerve stuff is just as bad as they say. So I haven't been sleeping all that great, but trying to stay positive.
Your hand is still shaky.
Yes. Suzanne says, hi, it's Siofra and Ian and everyone. I was watching ME vids again. Me vids. I don't know what me vids are. Maybe you can tell us what that is. But hi. Hi, Suzanne. Nice to see you here. Yeah, so I've definitely been making sure I'm taking care of me and everything else so that last night I ended up sleeping in the chair in the living room because laying down makes the nerve go crazy. So I got intermittent sleep, so I'm taking naps during the day. Emily says, sorry you aren't feeling well. I have fibro, so I can relate on nerve stuff. Really sorry you're experiencing it. Yeah. So Suzanne says Mandela effects is what ME videos are. Okay, cool. Emily says, hi, happy Sunday. Hi, Emily. It is a happy Sunday. So it's rainy where Mary is. It's sunny where we are. And a little bit of a breeze, but not too much of one. Ruth is here. Hi, all. Hi, Siofra. Hi, Ruth. So we're getting our usual groups of people are showing up, which is awesome. I've been noticing something on all of the different groups that I'm in and stuff like that. Whenever there's like a full moon with an eclipse, people go completely crazy. Like they're going to go out of their minds and whatnot. And I've gotten a couple of questions about that. And like, it's new, as far as I can tell. When I was coming up in paganism or doing magic or stuff like that, there was nothing about having to watch what you did on a full moon with a lunar eclipse and that you were going to cause chaos and your spells were going to go awry and go backwards and all this other stuff. So I was thinking about that and some other things and how it seems to be a way of disempowering us in our magic and making us like worried about what we're doing. So it's sort of weird. So Stardust says, hope you're feeling better a little bit, slowly though. And Suzanne says, at Siofra, my sis had shingles just of recent too, which someone at her job said their mom had at the same time. Sis is better now. Good. I wish it wasn't a minimum of 5 friggin' weeks and then hopefully things get better and back to normal. It's like the nerve is all inflamed, so if I reach out with my other hand too fast, the whole thing just goes twang. It's like, yeah, raw. Not fun, blah. But yeah, so, I mean, doing the video on wands and, you know, the number of wands that I have and how each one is so completely different from each other wand. I mean, each one of them represents a completely different type of energy. Like, so different from the idea that a solar wind might come along and knock you on your butt and you can't do magic anymore because of that, which is another thing I've been seeing lately. Like apparently we're not powerful witches. We're a bunch of weak empaths who don't know what the hell we're doing, and anything that messes up with our energy is just going to lay us flat. That's sort of the message I get, which I don't agree with. I think we're more powerful than that. And isn't that the point of being a witch? Is to have some control over your interfacing with the environment and, you know, not being subjected to the whims of everything. I don't know. It's just strange to me. So Suzanne says, my sis felt she had caught it in time. Yeah. Well, I got it within, 5 days, I think? The initial symptoms didn't have any of the actual blisters, so I really did not know what was going on. I thought I'd overdone it in the garden and weeding and stuff like that, and it was just like, muscle pain and discomfort and whatnot, but it was definitely more than that. When the blisters hit, though, then it became obvious to everyone, including me, what was going on. So it's like, yeah, life happens. And then I had this person who got onto my Facebook page and decided to tell me that maybe this happened to me because I wasn't following my true passion or just something to that effect. And I'm like, really? It's always interesting how strangers think they know what you're doing more than you do, especially when it's toxic positivity and victim blaming. It's kind of like, no, not okay with me. So Suzanne says, I'm still trying to harness this frequency magic, or whatever one wants to call this energy. That's the mandala energy stuff that you're talking about. And yeah, there certainly are definitely different frequencies that are out there as far as different kinds of energies and levels of energies and that kind of stuff. So it's always interesting to explore for sure.
The whole mandala thing gets kind of complicated when there's a lot of them. These things too.
Well, yeah. Yeah, you can get very, very specific with a lot of that kind of stuff. It can be a fun rabbit hole to go down and see what sticks when you come back up.
Well, a lot of these things, you're supposed to actually consider them three-dimensional, and some of them are pretty hard to visualize that way because they're complicated geometric patterns anyway.
So Aquarian says, I'm ready to start my first wand. I want it to embody and capture the essence of a thunderstorm. Do you have any recommendations? Interesting. Well, Willow would come to mind because of its a tendency to attract lightning, so it has a relationship with thunderstorms to start with. If you could find a piece of wood that had been hit by lightning, that would probably be pretty good. We have found a few pieces here and there. Or sometimes you can find that sand that's been hit by lightning strike on a beach that's turned to glass. So if you found some of that, you could incorporate that into the wand, do a little research and see what else might come up as far as that kind of thing goes. Interesting notion.
I think Willow would be a pretty good choice for that, really, myself.
Yeah. Suzanne says just the energy's coming in. Marisol says, I hate people like that. Yes, the toxic positivity people who blame you for everything. I'm like, so apparently when I was 7 years old, I wasn't following my true passion, which is when I got chickenpox. I mean, there are certainly things that are affected by the stuff that you're doing, and they can add a layer of stuff to that, but yeah, I reject the whole notion from beginning to end. And that's important when somebody puts an idea like that in your head. If you don't want it to be automatically incorporated into your subconscious, you got to look at it, pick it apart, find out why you're rejecting it, and then, do something to make sure it doesn't stick. Because you don't need little worms going in your head messing you up like that. Gnomes is here, says, please don't tell me I'm super late. No, you're not. We just started. And also, I saw a shadow climbing my wall last night. Any advice? I guess you need to find out what kind of a shadow it is, or set up an active circle and tell shadows they're not allowed. I mean, it depends on what it is. A lot of times the shadow things are just sort of random, coming in and out, sort of like gnats coming into your house. Not necessarily anything to do with you. Sometimes it is specifically about you or some energy you're putting out and attracting, or some of them seem to be just curious and want to look and see what's going on. So, like everything else, there's a variety of reasons, and the reasons help you generate responses to what's going on. If it's uncomfortable and you don't like it, then you can set up an active circle, use light energy, because the sort of like the selenite kind of energy dissipates the shadow energy. It doesn't like it. So I would do that kind of thing if that's what you want to do. But we're in a universe with all sorts of things that we haven't yet met. So you never know. So Aquarian liked our ideas about the thunderstorm. Suzanne says that chickenpox laid me out when I was a child too. Yeah, it sucks. Ryder says, hello Siofra, hello Ian, hello everyone. It's been a glorious weekend. Hi Ryder, glad to see you here. Ophelia says, hey lovely lady, I've missed you. Well, here I am. I'm alive at any rate, if not like completely and totally happy. Oh, I think I forgot to take the pill. I better take my pill. I'm on a mild narcotic for the pain, and I have to time it just right. And I was going to do it just before I started, and then I started and forgot. So. It's one of the few ones I've ever tried that doesn't make me sick to my stomach. So Suzanne says, I pay no mind to the shadow figures. Yeah, sometimes that's the best response. I mean, a lot of times these things are just looking to see if they get a reaction, and if they don't get a reaction, they get bored and go away. So there's that, too. Ophelia says, and hello to Ian, too.
Hello back at you.
And Ophelia also says, I loved your wand video, by the way. It was fun. I never know how long those things are going to be. But I thought, okay, fine, I'm just going to bring them all in. Because we're talking about making them, and you can see what I did and give you ideas of how you can do it. We had one of our former members who made a wand out of rose wood with the thorns on it, which I thought was interesting. She left the thorns on it. I think she took the thorns off the handle part and left the thorns elsewhere. So there's certainly a lot of variety as far as that goes. Gnomes is here, says, wherever I move, something is there. Also found out I brought a brownie with me when I went to a fae forest for my birthday last year. She is sweet, but she might be male. Well, I don't know. Male or female is just sort of a designation that we give them since they don't have bodies.
I do think they can be like polarity specific, so it could be like, even though they may not have an actual gender, it could be like
energetically
more
speaking,
electric or more magnetic or more fiery. Yeah.
Yep. Ryder says, I loved your wand video. I loved the water wand, the banishing wand, and the Akashic wand. Yeah, I love them too. The banishing wand was just such an interesting experience to come up with that one because, like I said in the video, when I was constructing it, and I put this amethyst like sticking up like at the back, and I'm like, why am I doing that? But this is where it needs to be. It's like following your intuition sometimes. It's after you finish that then you can look through and see what was the reason for that. There was an actual reason for it. And with the banishing wand, that turned out to be a really important little thing I did by keeping the energy in the wand instead of having it travel down into my hand. Probably a good idea not to absorb negative stuff as I'm trying to banish it. Ophelia says, ooh, rosewood with the thorns. Oops, come back here. Just trying to go ahead. And yes, the Akashic one was phenomenal. Marisol says, I think I tried my first spell this week and it worked. Well, good for you. Stardust says, hey Siofra, the other day I had a dream about a place near the beach I rarely go to, but found myself near by the next day and decided to go. When I parked my car, I saw in the distance a giant face of what appeared to be a lynx. It was made by the bushes and trees, sort of like the Green Man. Yeah, we've seen stuff like that. Ian saw a bear in a tree
very
once.
Vivid and clear.
Extremely vivid and clear, detailed like crazy. And I've seen stuff like that too in trees and sometimes in the sky. It's always interesting when that happens. Gnomes is here, says, oh, we finished with Stardust first, but it was the giant face of a lynx staring back at me. It was perfectly symmetrical. I've been there before and I've never seen it. Do you think that had some sort of meaning? Or was it maybe just a coincidence? I was going to take a picture, but I had a feeling that I shouldn't. It probably wouldn't even show up in a picture. That's the thing. Usually those things are so specific to your own abilities and the moment in time that you're at.
Yeah, but a lot of them have a little touch of clairvoyance there. And if you come back without, and you don't have a touch of clairvoyance, then you won't see it. I've seen some things that just happen, but I can't make myself
see them on purpose. Yeah. So Gnomes is here, says, I leave milk and sometimes bourbon out for her as just a friendly act and say it's just an act of kindness when I do, which is good. Nothing wrong with being nice to other creatures that live on the planet with us. I like those videos when I find them of like people helping animals that are in distress or other animals helping other animals in distress. I saw one the other day with an elephant that was stuck in a big mud hole, and there was this large construction digger or whatever excavator that they used to dig the elephant out and help the elephant get up out of the hole. And afterwards, the elephant bowed and hit his head, like put his head against the excavator, and it was pretty clear it was thanking the excavator for saving him, which I thought was fascinating. That, you know, it was like there was a big giant thing about the same size as the elephant, and they were making a connection, and the operator was clearly in tune with what was going on and was like putting the excavator head out there and letting the elephant say his thank yous. But it's just neat. I mean, we need to pay more attention to what's going on around us anyway. So I like that kind of stuff. Gnomes is here, says little things like earrings for them as well, for the Fae. Yeah, they like that kind of stuff. Suzanne says, the wand vid is awesome. I am looking at the trees that have Zeus and other characters' faces on it. Ryder says, everybody seems to have a lot of good energy today. It's great. Yeah, spring. And pretty soon it's going to be the summer solstice already. It's a fast year. It goes by just vamp.
Our summer's a little delayed over here in a way because when it's hot in the valley, we get the overcast.
Yeah. And we had wind for the last few days. Today it's not as breezy, and yesterday it wasn't as breezy, so it's nice. It's kind of hard to work out in the yard when the wind is whipping you around and it's always usually a cold wind, so that's not pleasant. Colorway says, yes, the goddess face was in the clouds during the April full moon for me. I love seeing stuff like that. It's kind of fun. I saw god and goddess faces turning into a giant goddess in an aurora borealis once when I was on a fire lookout up in British Columbia. And that was pretty special. That was kind of unexpected, to say the least. That the person who was standing next to me saw exactly the same thing I did. So that was encouraging. I think sometimes about, when I was talking last week, I talked about the two-headed dragon spirit that I met and stuff, and was remembering that when I came, like a couple of days later, I was on the city bus in Santa Cruz, and I'm telling these people about meeting a two-headed dragon, and I'm thinking, yeah, they probably just thought I was completely wonkers. This lady is talking about a two-headed dragon. It's like, I don't know.
A lot of people just kind of dismiss that stuff, though, because it's too hard to think about, so sometimes they just dismiss it and don't think about it, and then it doesn't affect them. But
yeah. Gnomes is here, says the brownie I have named Brownie plays tag with my cat, and sometimes I hear beautiful music or singing when I leave her things. Well, that's wonderful. It's kind of cool, and I think it's neat that your cat likes to play with the brownie, and vice versa. So that's kind of nice. And Suzanne says, yes, the animals appreciate. Aquarian says, sorry, this is sort of off topic. Do you find scrying through different mediums, water, glass, fire, nothing, to have different utilities? Well, I would say that it depends on your abilities and the way your mind works as to which kind of scrying works best for you. So, I do a lot of water scrying, or used to, and I have a crystal ball I've used in the past, and fire I like as well. And air, when I'm doing air and looking up at the sky, I'm seeing not like the future so much as like the giant beings that inhabit the other parts of our world that are floating around in the air. So,
as far as the different things directly used for scrying like that, fire is interesting. It'll purify you too if you let it, but it's definitely harder to get in touch with and work with on that kind of a level than water for most people.
Yeah, because it's the energy is different.
Yeah, water is just slower and more fluid, and fire is, fiery.
I like the fact that when I'm tuning into fire, it turns green. And not because of anything I've put in the fire. Which is what regular people say. Oh yeah, you had some copper in there, did you? Nope, nope. I had no copper in my fire. It just turns green when I'm in tune with it and whatnot. So Ophelia says, speaking of animals, my back garden is a magnificent fairyland, and I love, love, love to plant, but I'm having issues with the animals eating my plants. I actually had a long talk with this rabbit, who I think is part of the Fae folk, and I know he listened, but I'm just curious, do you know of any good methods to keep creatures from eating your plants without hurting them? Wire. Put your wire around your plants. That's the only thing that I've found that works. Yeah, because if you don't want to hurt them, you have to prevent them. And, you know, if it's tasty looking and it smells good and it's something that they usually eat, it's really hard for them to resist, no matter how much they might want to. You know, it's just... Or plant a separate garden just for them. Some people do that, where they have a separate little garden that's just for the wildlife. And sometimes that can work, whereas, you know, it's like, don't eat these plants, but these plants I've planted just for you, and you can eat them to your heart's content. So then you're like adding something to their diet, and making that kind of an energetic connection. So that's a possibility. Ryder was laughing at what Ophelia said about the plants and the rabbit. Gnomes is here. Is it normal to be drawn to the point of almost being hypnotized by the moon? Yeah. I mean, it's a fascinating thing to look at. And the energy of the full moon can be pretty intense, especially the more in tune you are with magical energies. Even though I'm not well at the moment with the nerve stuff going on and not taking advantage of that when it happens, the night of the full moon, my living room was going like this. It was like this energy was just whooshing in and out and making waves.
That's the thing, is the tidal affects the rhythmic aspect of the moon. It's actually pretty important with your waxing and waning moon.
And certainly that's why they, you know, lunacy and lunatics are named after the moon, because of the idea that the energy brings out things that are hidden in yourself or in the world. And I know when I've like been able to go for a long walk by moonlight, that's certainly when the fairy folk are really out there. The world looks different in moonlight than it does in the sun, and it's just a spectacular kind of thing. It's like everything is softer and silvery and otherworldly, and you walk down a wooden path with a full moon. There have been a number of places I've gone in the past where I've been able to experience that. We had one place outside of Santa Cruz when I lived there that had a tree that had been hit by lightning and was hollowed out on the bottom. So it was like you could pass through the inside of the tree and out the other side. And we went up there fairly often when I lived there and walked through the tree and used that hole in the tree as like a veil from our normal reality to a magical reality, and then walked up the trail in the moonlight and stuff like that. And it was really quite spectacular. And you know, it's like when you're going into an altered state of consciousness, you're going to have some physical noticeable effects. So spaciness, dizziness, sometimes a little bit of confusion, or difficulty remembering certain words and phrases when you're getting into that state are normal for that. So, yeah. Ophelia doesn't want to hurt an animal or anything in nature.
Well, I understand that. Sometimes, though, you just got to do what you got to do. As long as you're not going out of your way to be offensive or mean to the animals, then, you know, you can do what you need to do to keep them out or whatever.
Well, well, yeah. I mean, you know, everything eats something, so there's that. But you have to decide how you're going to impact the universe around you, especially your local universe that you live with, and paying attention to it. And Ryder also suggested the giving them their own designated plant area. Ophelia says that she has a whole section dedicated to the Fae, but I'm still having issues with other plants. My plants are my babies. Ah. Stardust says that's so awesome that the fire turns green. Yes, it is pretty awesome. Aquarian has little eyebrow raises, I think, is what that is. Ruth asks, have you done a spirit doll? You mean like to do a doll and put a spirit inside of a doll? Or to do a puppet to do like a healing spell or a binding spell on someone else? Ophelia says, thank you. I'm going to keep talking to these creatures and directing energy in another direction. Gnomes is here, says, the moon in any phase puts me into a trance sometimes. I dance under it and see visions. Yeah. But it's certainly associated with that whole idea.
I find that, for me, moonlight really helps with the clairvoyance.
Yeah, when we were out at that
I don't have much of
power spot at that cabin, it was pretty spectacular, the stuff that we could see in the moon, not being distracted by anything else, which is one of the tricks, is like you can not be affected by the moon because you're not paying attention to the moon, and you know, because you're distracted, your mind is somewhere else, or you can be very affected because you're paying attention. So let's see. Yeah, writer says, I find the moon most intoxicating in a healthy way, very hypnotic. And at Gnomes is here, me too. It's great, isn't it? Yes, it is. Yes, that's one of the things I like, is you can talk about this kind of stuff and people actually, like us, know what we're talking about. Other people might look at us askance, like, I don't know. But hey. So Ruth says, in a doll. Okay, so putting a spirit in a doll? No. I think that's like a spirit trap, the idea of trapping a spirit in a doll to keep it there. And I've not done anything like that.
No, or they could go with the elemental idea type of thing, but that's a whole other subject.
Yeah, creating an elemental, you can use a doll to do that as a house for an elemental spirit that you're making, but that's a little bit different, I think, than what you're talking about. You might have to elaborate, because remember, I have a literal brain, and I literally only get what you say.
Well, I'm glad you don't have a metaphorical brain.
I don't know.
Totally.
I think a lot of people have more metaphorical brains than I do. Ophelia says, I love this group, Naked Moon Dancing Forever. Gnomes is here, I'm particularly strong with clairvoyance, clairaudience, and psychometry. And Philippa says, I'm totally driven by the moon. Psychometry is interesting because that can be, for me, it's sort of like a two-edged sword. When I decide to open myself up to an object, I never know for sure what I'm going to get. And I've had some powerfully negative experiences reading an object, as well as some positive ones. So I actually have a necklace that's an Egyptian made out of bone necklace that we found at a local shop years ago, right by my birthday, and went into there and I saw this thing, and it's got the colors, like the blue and sort of aqua colored glass beads. The fiance is the traditional Egyptian stuff, and then it's got hieroglyphics on the bottom, and it's made into like a lotus blossom on it, on the bone, drawn on it. And I was very drawn to that. There was nothing else like that in the store. It was clearly a unique, one-of-a-kind kind of piece that someone had made. And I guess the woman who owned the shop got it at a not a yard sale, a estate sale from somebody. And when I tried it on, and I clasped the clasp behind my neck, it was like all of my chakras just like lit up, and I burst into tears. It was like it belonged to me from another life, like it was mine, and so I had to have it. So I put some money down on it, and we got it. Became my birthday present, and that's a necklace that I sometimes use when I'm doing different kinds of magic. So you never know; it can be pretty awesome. But then there's the negative stuff, like when we ran into the Nazi memorabilia at a secondhand store, and Ian was very excited because he could feel something coming from there. And he's like, hey, I can feel something coming from there. So I'm like, okay, and taking down my shields to see what it is, and I almost threw up all over the floor. So yeah, psychometry can be definitely tricky. Let's see. Writer says, at Ophelia, not brave enough to do it naked, but I would like to. Too many weirdos around where I live. Yeah, you gotta watch out for those people. They get the wrong idea. Ruth says, cool, thank you. Colorway says, my monthly cycle is in sync with the full moon, new moon, which makes it feel even more sacred. Marisol says, mine's too, and that's not uncommon for women to be pulled by the full moon, or if they're living together, their menstrual cycles will start to match. That's actually a pretty well-known thing because of the sweat that comes out of us has a specific hormone that kind of sends out a signal to tell other women who are near their moon to get on their moon, and after you're together for a while, everyone's moon will be in sync with one another, which can make it pretty fun in a house if there's a lot of women and they're all on their moon at the same time. Which is why Native Americans put them in a tent away from everybody so they could just be by themselves, hang out together, and like, not potentially destroy the entire tribe with whatever was going on, because women are, according to the natives that I've met, are more powerful on their moon than a medicine man at his highest power. So they have to give them a special place and just take care of them and let them do their thing. It's also the reason why in a lot of cultures women aren't supposed to cook when they're menstruating, because again, that hormone that's in the sweat, it can actually make milk sour. It's sort of an interesting thing that can happen. Fascination there. Suzanne says, I love it all, the moon, the stars, the sun, etc. Stardust says, I'm a Virgo, so I get ya on been very literal. Well, I'm not a Virgo. That's not why I'm literal. But he's a Virgo. My family, the women in my family are just very literal. Me, my daughter, and my granddaughter, we all have that same way of thinking and responding to input. Sort of interesting. Gnomes is here says, sometimes I can just be in a place or near a thing and see vivid things to the point it takes over and I physically see it. Yeah, that's how we found the Buddha that's in here that we rescued, was that kind of thing. Walking into a secondhand store, and all of a sudden I started seeing images coming off of the large head, which was, I guess, about 6 to 8 feet tall, I think, wooden head. And that's also one of the ways that you can communicate with spirits. They can send you those sort of images in that way. So, Colorway says, pumpkin? Ghost pumpkin? I don't know what that is.
Is that like a ghost pepper?
I don't know. I don't know all of these little things everybody gets to use. Marisol says, wow, that's so beautiful. Ryder says, women's cycles are very magical when that happens. Yes, they are. Gnomes is here says, I have to go outside. There is a woman in my room speaking very strong energy. Cold, not negative, just too much for me. Okay, be safe. Aquarian says, when crafting spells, I work with the meanings and sounds of ancient runes to craft a unique sound spell word that reflects the energy I wish the word to release when spoken. I also add herbs. Yeah, whatever works for getting your association and getting your brain going, your energy and your brain going in the direction that you want it to go to is what you do, for sure. Aquarian says, I did that one. Ophelia says, yes, ladies, we are all goddesses. We are all in sync with Mother Moon. We are amazing. Aquarian says, do you know any other ways to develop spells or words of power through creating a unique sound or energy? Well, the music of the spheres and the Kabbalah are definitely two of the ways of creating unique sounds and energy. Singing bowls are sort of a reference to that kind of stuff. And listening to nature sounds. I have heard the sound of the spheres more than once, and it's kind of hard to describe. It's a music, the music of the spheres. That's what they call it. It is a music. It's like the biggest orchestra you've ever heard in your life, but everything works together. So instruments, like things that connect to you are the things that are going to work when it comes to that.
Well, some people have tried doing a thing like that with the sigil magic by creating your own sigils by various means and things also.
Ophelia says, anyone else ever used menstrual blood for blood magic? I certainly did when I had one. Don't anymore, but it certainly is a way of making something uniquely yours. It's one way of adding your energy to something. And men tend to use either sperm or blood, like, poking your finger. Yep. The writer says, at Ophelia, I personally haven't. I don't know that much about it, but I'm interested in those that do it, always willing to learn. Gnomes is here, says, I can't enter graveyards. I get drained and pass out. Well, then that sounds like a good idea to stay away from them. Yeah. Unless you want to overcome that in some sense or whatever and get to the point where you can walk in a graveyard, which is certainly something you can choose to decide to try. But if you're allergic to them, there's certain foods I don't eat because my body doesn't like them. And if I was wanted to, I could go to a doctor and get some kind of a thing to make me less sensitive to it. But if in some cases there's no point. So that's just sort of something you have to figure out for yourself. Marisol said, me too, gnomes, just even passing by them. I don't seem to have a problem with graveyards. I don't really sense much in the way of spirits there, because most spirits are actually stuck where they died rather than where they were buried. There's only a few that end up in graveyards, for me anyway. Sometimes it's kind of fascinating to go through and look at the stones and stuff like that, but I'm not that attracted to going to them anymore either.
No, there's a lot of that in Voodoo and Santeria for various things.
Getting graveyard dirt, and whatnot. In fact, there's some places I've seen they put up signs, no digging up graveyard dirt here. Because, it's sort of like honoring the dead and respecting the dead is rather important. Like when they found that one mummy and the Incan princess, whatever she was, they put her back. They were like, okay, we need to put her back. So depending on the culture and stuff like that, it's like disturbing the dead is considered bad mojo, really bad, and can cause things to happen. Egyptian stuff certainly had a lot of that with their curses that they put on their tombs in order to try and dissuade people from breaking in and stealing things.
The Hawaiian thing, they're very sensitive to where the ancestors are buried.
Right, in the Hawaii, the ancestors are usually hidden in caves and are never to be disturbed. They don't like dealing with bones, they're not okay. And then Tibet is the opposite, where they have human bones for a lot of stuff all the time, because they don't have any place to bury their dead because it's like permafrost.
Skull cups.
Yeah, that was interesting, holding a human skull cup in my hand in that one store.
Yeah, that means I've actually run across two of them.
I was worried about that. I wasn't sure how I would react. But when we were up at the ashram up in Portland, I decided not to play with the human thigh bone trumpets that they had. I'm just like, I don't know how these were made. I don't know who they came from. I don't think I want to find out how this person died, just in case. My psychometry is on really high today. It's like, so I'm not.
That wasn't something we're so interested in anyway. That's where you feed the demons astrally, more or less.
The Tibetan stuff?
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah.
I know it's spelled C-H-umlaut-O-D, but I don't know how that's properly pronounced.
So Otherworld Gatekeeper says, I speak to fairies. Yep, the she, Denise she. Ophelia says, I totally get that, writer. It can feel strange, but I absolutely love it, and for me it adds such an extreme enhancement to my spells. That's with the using blood, menstrual blood. Emily says, someone had a rose quartz pyramid headstone at one graveyard I went to. That was really cool. Unusual. Different. Joey D says, I loved your wand video. Thank you again. Regarding your Vanishing Wand, the crystals on the handle in between the tip and the amethyst, I'm curious to know what happens to the energy of the shadow people. Well, they get stuck inside that part of the wand. And then when I'm ready, I take the wand outside and I put the yellow quartz tip on the ground, and I drain the energy into the earth and dissipate it. And that sort of dissipates that energy. There's been a couple of times where I've collected, absorbed the shadow person I've seen and found a human spirit underneath it, then I had to deal with and help cross over. And then a couple of times when there wasn't anything there, it was just the shadow person. So, yeah, I'm still like exploring and trying to understand some of that stuff and gathering new data as it goes along. Gnomes is here says, is there any properties to Lapis, Lazuli? Yeah, Lapis is something I've been attracted to for years. I think we were just talking about the other day in relation to Jupiter.
Yeah, I think it's generally, Jupiterian.
It's considered Jupiterian. It has gold flecks in it, the good quality lapis, and it sort of looks like a star field. The difference between the lapis and the sodalite, which is very similar in look, is the gold. I don't think sodalite has the gold flecks in it.
And I'd like to point out something interesting about that. The gold makes it hold a charge much, much better.
Ah.
So it'll hold a charge much, much better and easier because of the gold that's in a stone that does not have gold.
I didn't even think about that.
That's
Good point.
Reason for the gold in the fluid condenser, because even a little bit of it adds an enormous amount of accumulative power.
So Otherworldly Gatekeeper says, you are really cool, miss. Thank you. I appreciate that. Gnomes is here says, I wear a silver and lapis lazuli ring at all times, even in sleep. Yeah, and it's kind of interesting when you find something that you're attracted to. I know last week I was talking about making the ring of invisibility for my granddaughter because she's being harassed by this very strange stalker dude where she lives up in Portland. And actually, the research that I did on it and so forth, finding out about the heliotrope, etc. And I actually wrote the invocation for her to use every morning when she puts the ring on to try and start the process of charging the ring up. But it's sort of interesting. It's like, it's not to make her virtually invisible like to anybody, but to make her invisible to potential enemies or threats and people who wouldn't know who she was or be friends kind of thing. And that's like a really old spell that has been lost in history. So I'm creating it out of my associations and research into the mythology about Helios, the sun god, and stuff like that. So it was interesting. It was on the full moon that I actually got the invocation and wrote it out, and then I just gave it to her the other day. So Otherworld Gatekeeper says, will you be my teacher? Well, that's sort of what I'm doing right here. And I decided to actually, it came to me that on my Patreon page, I decided to actually do a couple of tiers, the basic tier from $5 up, with the group chat once a month or whatever. And then for $50 a month, I'll spend an hour, do an hour video with somebody a month. So you can ask me any questions and stuff like you want. It's sort of slowly been evolving into that because people ask those kind of questions. So we're sort of starting the process of putting that out there. And so think about it. And you can send me an email at shiefrasmagicalcove@gmail.com. Sorry about that thing. And see what we can come up with. So, whoopsie. Joey D says, gold is actually the most electrically conductive metal. Next is silver, then copper, then aluminum. Just an FYI. Ian says no. And he knows electricity.
Actually, silver is more conductive, but the reason gold is used so often is because it's a noble metal and it doesn't deteriorate or tarnish, so your connections stay solid without getting corroded or oxidized.
Right. This is from somebody who's been making his own sound system for a while now. He does that kind of stuff a lot. So I want Dango. Okay. Says, hello, miss. Hello. How are you? Amy Muse says, great to catch you live, Shiefra. Great to see you here. Otherworld Gatekeeper says, I see. Interesting. So, yeah. I mean, if you're going to get personal individual instruction, you have to figure out how to do it, especially since we all live in different places, right? And the last time I let somebody actually come to my place to
Well,
try
you
and
didn't exactly
do.
let him. You
Well,
told him-
that's true.
told him not
The
to,
last time I
actually.
said, okay, we'll think about this. This guy drove up here from Texas for 17 hours or whatever the hell.
Without telling us he's coming.
Right, and just sort of showed up on my door after I said, this is probably not a good time for you to come. And he just did it anyway. And then he freaked out and blocked me on Facebook and all over the universe and stuff like that and left because I wasn't what he expected or what he was looking for or what he wanted, or I disappointed him in some way. And that's what happens a lot. That's why I did the student-teacher relationship video. So if you're interested in doing that kind of thing, watch that video for sure. So you have some idea of my take on how that relationship should work from my end and what I expect from potential students. It's not necessarily a comfortable relationship.
No individual should be put too much on the pedestal. Accepting a teacher or a guru is absolutely fine, but there's a slight disconnect between the way you want to treat them and the way things might actually be, because generally with anybody like that, you will want to treat them and act, and this is for your own benefit, as if they were perfect, but you have to also be ready for when they're not perfect, when their personality is just the worldly human that lives in them and not the teacher. So you need to discriminate. It's always best, if you're trying to attract something to you, to think of that being, that person, as perfect, because perfect is what you're trying to attract. You don't want their little foibles and things. So sorry,
That's okay.
didn't mean to go off that far into that,
But yeah, I mean, the thing is that people have expectations. I had this, okay, so funny story. I had a client that came in to see me when I was as a massage therapist. And the first time I'd seen her, she was new to town. She had a dog that was dying, and she didn't know anybody. She was going to have a vet come over to sit, to put her dog down, to to keep him from being tortured by his illness. And as a human being, I volunteered for no other reason, because she didn't know anybody, and I had time to go sit with her when the vet came so she wouldn't be alone. And so I went over and I did that, and I helped her bury her dog and all this other stuff. And because I did that, she decided that God had put me on earth to be her personal guardian angel. And ordinarily, I never would have gotten to know someone like her, because she is like the most material person I think I've ever known. She was all about like superficiality. It's like, having an expensive watch, having the most expensive camera or whatever, but being afraid to use it and all this other stuff. And
well, she was a flight attendant. She didn't really have time to.
Well, not then. She
didn't
was.
want to bother learning it either.
Right. It was a very strange experience for me. And as soon as she told me that I was her personal guardian angel, I knew that there would be a fall coming, because you cannot maintain that kind of relationship from someone else's head in any event. And then one day it happened. A number of years later, she suddenly decided that I wasn't, and she didn't want anything to do with me. And even if I'm standing in front of her and I say hello to her and say her name, I don't exist to her. She looks through me and pretends that I'm not there. So it's very interesting. So there's always, those kinds of interesting dynamics that can happen with people and their head and how it works. So Philippa says, you mentioned binding last week. Please, can you tell me if it's possible to bind a non-magical person from causing you harm, or at least to limit the harm they cause? Well, I would say yes, because I've done that. And usually what happens is because they're breaking the law one way or another, and legal means become available to stop them and to get them out of a situation because somebody is harmful. So yeah, it doesn't have to be just a magical person. We've done that with people that aren't magical, just as a protective measure.
Yeah, I also recommend being very specific and careful when you do that, that if it pertains to you, that you only bind them as pertaining to you, or if you're, depending if they're doing a bunch of black magic and you're trying to help a bunch of people or something. I don't know.
Well, she's talking about non-magical people in the question.
Yeah, so.
So Otherworld Gatekeeper says, I also speak with the Tuatha De Danann, as I have fairy husband is related to them. Yes, and so do I. And I am a relative, I believe, of theirs. my family was raised at the base of Knocknashee in Ireland. And so they have definite connection to the Sidhe. And Ryder says, because that's not weird at all to travel all the way from Texas. I know, especially without permission. That doesn't bode well for a student-teacher relationship when you say, don't do this, and then they do that anyway. Yeah. It's like, okay, you're not going to listen to me. There's really nothing I can do. Gnomes is here, says, a white and gray female who moves oddly, dark hair and snake-like silver eyes, only one ever showing, gives me a negative vibe. Any idea what it is? There's a lot of things that can be described in a lot of different ways, and that doesn't mean I'm going to know what it is.
A lot of them.
Yeah, there's shapeshifters that are out there as well. If they're giving you a negative vibe, then, tell them they have to leave you alone, or, make sure you have your protections up, do your circle around yourself, have the object on your body, with you, ring or talisman or whatever it is, to keep your energy clear. If you feel like it's imposed some of its energy on you, then use some selenite to clear your aura and get any dark stuff out of it, because selenite's really easy to use for that. And I use that too sometimes, just when I'm going to bed, to, clear my energy field with a piece of selenite and unblock anything that might be blocked in here. Joey D says, oh, nice. Thanks, Ian. I learned about gold's conductivity in tech school, but they didn't mention the corrosion bit. Thank you again. Oh, I mentioned metals in regards to wand making. And yes, that's true. Those are good metals for wand making. Suzanne says, enjoying the conversation. Thank you, Siofra and Ian. Busy about in my house. Otherworld Gatekeeper says, same. Philippa says, thank you. I'll look into this and see what I can come up with. I'm not up to anything odd, just self-protection. Well, you're allowed to protect yourself. That's kind of, as far as I'm concerned, a given. And, it's like there's some people out there that feel if you're not always doing everything with light, etc., that you're being bad. In fact, I had a group I joined for a few minutes. They invited me, some white light bringers group or whatever. And then when I got to the rule page, it's like you're not allowed to protect yourself from other people's energy. You can't send their energy back to them because that would be a form of attack. And I'm like, nope, I'm not agreeing to any of this. I'm keeping my options open. Thank you very much. And I'm out of here. So, yeah, we all have these different ways of being. So, it's like what works for us doesn't necessarily work for somebody else. Writer says that Gnomes is here. Inspiration for story or something. Do you write or draw? I have done that before. I've been inspired by some of the beings I've seen. Wrote stories, songs, drawn pictures. They seem to like that. That's a good way to actually get a visual representation if you can draw. Me, I'm not a good drawer. I wish I was, because I've seen some really awesome shit. If only I could draw it really well. Like one of those police sketch artists. It's like, I should find a sketch artist and describe what I'm seeing and make them draw it for me. That'd be fun. Otherworldly Gatekeeper says, my father in a past life is none other than Manon MacLear. I call him Oberon at times. Okay. I have nothing to add to that. So, let's see. I guess I caught up with the questions at this point, but it's been certainly an active hour so far. I'm one of his daughters. Writer says, it's a good way of processing it all when it's overwhelming. Yeah, drawing. Philippa says, I cleanse others' energies they send at me and return it to them in a neutral form. Well, good for you. I'm not interested in paying that much attention to them if they can't clear their own energy, but I think that's great that you can. We all have to decide for ourselves what's going to work. It probably helps them. Maybe. I don't know. It just depends. So, me, I just bounce it back at them. Like, this is your stuff, take care of it. Not mine. Not mine to deal with. Not mine to take care of. Not mine to do anything for. It's like, you put it out. It's your lesson to learn the lesson, or keep on putting out junk, But I'm like, like that. Otherworld Gatekeeper says that Philippa, cool. Yes, I think it's cool too. I think it's great that there's so many different ways of doing everything that's out there. Marisol says, is that shielding? No, that's more active, I think, what Felipa's doing. If she's taking the energy and then transforming it into something more neutral and then sending it back, that's not just shielding, that's not just mirroring or bouncing back or rejecting the energy coming in. That's a definite different kind of a thing altogether. Me, I do basic shielding and bouncing back. And it's like, I have enough of my own stuff to deal with. I don't need to deal with everyone else's stuff too.
So much time.
Well, it's their responsibility. That's what they're supposed to be here learning something about, right? I figure. Writer says, energy alchemist. That's not a bad phrase. That actually works pretty good. We have a new local kitty cat. I got Ian to meet her this morning. She's friendly. She's little. She's pretty cute. And we don't have cats in our house at the moment, but we really like cats. And so it's just kind of really neat that these neighborhood cats show up and either sleep in our garden or come up and let us pet them and stuff like that. So we get the perks without having to take care of the cat. Emily says transmutation. Yeah, that'd be another good word for that. It is a form of transmutation. I've been working on my octopus. So Otherworld Gatekeeper says there's something big going to happen in Ireland in summer solstice. Cool. Let us know what it is after it happens. Summer solstice is only 3 weeks away. 4 weeks, something like that. I think it's 3 weeks. Around the 20th, usually the 20th to the 22nd. I haven't looked up the specific date this year.
Start having summer.
Well, actually, our best summer weather is off in October here when it comes to that. Otherworld Gatekeeper says, of course. He'll let us know, or she, excuse me, will let us know what happens in Ireland in the summer solstice. I actually started watching a show on some different sacred sites, and I started watching the one about the Oracle at Delphi in the Pythias, because I remember being a Pythia from before Apollo was part of the whole thing, and so that was interesting. I had to stop though because I started falling asleep, so I stopped the video and took a nap. Since I'm sleeping in bursts of a couple of hours because of the pain thing going on. 20th to the 21st of June. Yep, figure it's going to be somewhere in there. Writer says this year is going way too quick. The older you get, the faster they go. It's like just the way it is. Marisol says, I have an affinity to cats. I think my roommate's cat hated girls, but not me. Well, that's good. I've met some cats that aren't very fond of a lot of people, but were very fond of me, so.
Well, Jasmine butted with a hairbrush.
Yeah, poor Jasmine. She was a rescue cat, and she definitely had been abused by her previous owners, which is sad. Otherworld says, at Ryder, I agree. This year is going way too quick. Marisol says, or maybe just that cat. Just that cat. I don't know. Joey D says, make me more likely to take the correct action. I'm not sure where that comes from. I don't know what is more likely to make you take correct action. Did I miss something else you said? Nope. Okay. So you'll have to be a lot more specific, because I'm not going to try and make you take correct action. That's up to you. It's like you are your own inspiration and your own decider as far as what action is correct or not correct. Comment too long. I'll try again. Okay. Gnomes is here, says, I have the ability to have animals follow me or even adore me when they attack others. Okay. I'm not sure about that either.
Positive thing if animals like you now.
It's nice if animals like you, yeah. I think my local crows are now much more used to me. I think these are crows that were born after I started feeding the crows, and they seem to have a different attitude towards me. In fact, I'll put my peanuts out, and they'll actually start coming down on the lawn before I've even turned around and left the area for them to feed. So it's always interesting developing relationships with different animals. And we have deer that walk by every so often. That's just sort of cool. Oops, come back here. Writer says, I have to do something this year for the solstice. Missed the last two because of all the lockdowns and COVID. Yeah, that's definitely something that's been happening all around the planet. Gnomes is here, says, and hear the whisperings on the wind. I have the ability to have animals follow me or even adore me when they attack others and hear whispers of the wind. Yep. I actually was hearing talking the other night, last night, like a conversation happening in the distance. When that happens, though, happens in the family, I generally ignore it because if you try to hear what they're saying, it never actually comes through all the way. So what's the point? Otherworld's Gatekeeper says, what happens to when your heart is lighter than the feather of Mahat? This happened to me in a dream last month. That means you get to go to the other side, to the positive place? That's the idea of your soul being weighed against the weight of a feather. And if it's not lighter than the feather, then you go to the bad place. And if it is, you go to the good place. So that probably means you're in a good place. Or at least your unconscious thinks you're in a good place, I'm assuming. Denise says, bless you, I have a question. Once you bury a spell jar, do you just leave it where you bury it or dig it up at some point? It depends upon what kind of spell it is. Most of the time you just bury it and leave it, though. And not on your property. Most spell jars you don't want to have, like, unless it's a protection jar for your property. And if you're going to bury a protection jar for your property, if you leave the property, then you're supposed to dig them up. But then you have to remember where they are. So that's one of the reasons why people put them, like, in the attic or in the top of a closet so that they can find them and take them with them. And you see posts on the internet on some of the pagan groups where someone has found something like that and wonders what they should do with it and what it means and if it's bad and all this other stuff. So, yeah. So Denise says, oh, that's the one I just read. Joey says, I recently saw a young man being abusive towards a young woman. I wanted to intervene but didn't. Yeah, sometimes the situation is such that you don't feel that you can. And, you try and figure out what to do if you know these people or not. Or if it's in a public environment, you can call the police and have them. But sometimes intervening puts you at risk as well and then doesn't help the woman either, especially in the abusive relationships.
And the woman might not appreciate it.
Right, sometimes the women don't appreciate it. But a lot of times what happens is if she doesn't defend the guy in public, if it happened in a public place, and when you're trying to help her, then when she gets home and she's by herself with an abusive person, then things get a lot worse for her. And so it's like it's sort of a complicated and delicate, energetic relationship going on there. And for women in general, the most dangerous time for them is when they're leaving an abusive person. So if you know this person, maybe you can give them the name of a women's shelter or something like that, or a women's group that might be able to help them. And sometimes you can't do anything for them. You just have to hope that they're going to get out. It's a terrible thing that happens in societies around the planet. Otherworld Gatekeeper says, Morgan likes you. Yes. There's a lot of different gods and goddesses that like me. That's why I'm eclectic, because I don't want to say no, Otherworld Gatekeeper says, I think you get to go into the higher realms, heaven. That would be about the feather? Marisol says, crow friends seem like the coolest thing. Yeah, I've had both crows and ravens that are friends. Some people don't really like crows, which is, it's like, okay, fine, but they're so smart. I really like them. Gnomes is here, says, crows show often in each place I've lived. I was told by a former friend once I was given a mark of protection by Odin due to a mark that popped up one day. It never faded. Okay. I had one time I was standing outside waiting for a ride and a couple crows landed in a tree and then a couple more crows landed in a tree, the same tree, and I just was watching them. And by the time my ride got there were like 30 crows in the tree. And the guy says, how do you do that? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not doing anything, just looking at the crows. They just like me. What can I say? And there's a crow that's been following my granddaughter up in Portland where she is. And it's interesting, like the universe is always trying to help you out if it can. And she's in danger. There's no doubt about it between the different people that are stalking her. She has had total strangers in her neighborhood that she's never even met come up to her to warn her, to tell her that they have noticed that she is in danger and that this guy is stalking her. And when I talked to her the other day, I told her, I said, this is the universe trying to warn you. And she's getting out. They have a place to move. They're moving to a different town. And they'll be out in about 2 weeks. They'll be gone completely. So she's taking the warning seriously, and we're getting them the hell away from that situation because this guy's like obsessed. And obsession is a difficult thing to fight. Emily says, I asked for my soul name during a full moon meditation and received Mahat. I was surprised, but I have an incredibly strong sense of justice. Well, we can connect to different god and goddess names throughout our lifetime, and sometimes one will be more in the forefront than another. In a group I was in Santa Cruz, we each picked a god or goddess name to adopt in order to sort of tune into the energy. So for a while I was Ishtar, and that was interesting. Philippa says, Denise says, thank you, you're so full of knowledge. You're welcome, I try. Philippa says, oh hell, I've moved 6 times in the last 10 years and I've an appalling memory. I'm definitely not burying any jars in my garden. Probably a good idea.
You know who did exactly that and couldn't find him later?
Frank? Yep, that would be Frank. Otherworld Gatekeeper says, I've been getting a lot of underworld dreams as of late. Thing is, it's in different pantheons. What does it mean? Well, you could be eclectic like me. I mean, there's common themes throughout all the different pantheons. They're like representations in different cultures of probably the same kind of thing.
I wanted to add a little thing because of something I said on the live forum in the past, and that's that I sort of take what I want from other places and use it, but what I didn't cover in there is if that's going to work and you're going to be eclectic, you have to have the proper respect for the symbol to start with. You can't just grab stuff and use them. You have to understand it and become one with it, become harmonious with it before you can incorporate it fully. So I didn't want anybody to think I was talking a lack of respect towards other religions or practices or anything.
Otherworld Gatekeeper at Gnome says, I've actually been to Asgard many times in dreams. Well, all those places exist in the astral realm, and other, energetic realities and stuff, so you can visit them. I have told you guys before, I accidentally fell into a comic book place once where they were writing stories, and the characters, superheroes and supervillains, were trying to figure out what they were going to be doing in their story to help their writer. So, there's a lot of stuff out there. So Priestess Felicia says, prayer and heart. Thank you. Philippa says, I saw a crow on a lamppost outside my kids' school. It was watching me intently as I walked by, so I stopped to chat to it, thinking nothing of it. Then I realized other moms were watching. I do that all the time. I'm constantly talking to things out loud in front of people. Yep. Gnomes is here, says, I've seen Hades' castle in dreams, even had conversations with him. Yeah, I actually had Anubis show up in a dream and have me go to sleep on his lap, and he took me into the underworld. So, it's like, I think the underworld is really a good symbol for the shadow realm inside of you, your unconscious, and stuff like that. So it was a pretty powerful dream. Emily says, yeah, I definitely don't think I'm like Mahat incarnate, but part of me kind of thinks we're all partially the gods split into bodies to experience life and affect the material directly. Well, that would be one way of seeing it, and certainly not a bad way of seeing it. Otherworld says, I agree with you, sir. Oh, Stardust says, I'm glad that she's moving to a safer place. It sounds pretty scary. A lot of weirdos out there, yeah. And Otherworld says, I agree with you, sir, so I'm not sure who he's agreeing with. Agreed. I'm glad. Yes, everyone agrees. Whatever it is, I'm glad they're agreeing. Otherworld Gatekeeper says, at Gnomes is here. Hades talked to me too. In a past life, I was Persephone. I found it interesting remembering being a Pythia. So that's why I was interested in watching the thing about the oracle at Delphi. And it took them forever to get around to that. They kept talking Apollo, 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 and I'm like, no, it wasn't with Apollo. And then finally they said, and before Apollo, it was Gi, or Gaia, Earth Mother. And I'm like, okay, that's it. So little snippets here and there sometimes come through from past lives. And, if you're into Jungian psychology, certainly identifying with archetypal gods and goddesses is one of the ways the unconscious communicates with us, according to them. Jonathan Church says, hi, I'm super late. Yes, you are. We only have 20 minutes left before we're going to go, but nice to see you here. And it's always late where you are, so welcome. Philippa says, I go to the same damn place in my dreams every night with the same people and the same emotions and energy. I can't really see the place I'm in well enough to explain it. What does this mean? You have something you haven't worked through. My husband has the same problem.
Yes, I do.
It's almost always identical, although he's now starting to branch out into having some other kinds of dreams, which is a good sign. But it means that there's some real, a block in there that your subconscious is really trying to push through to the foreground and get you to deal with. Sometimes journaling might help, therapy might help. See if you can figure out what the heck it's trying to tell you, then it might move on to something else.
Yeah, I'm really bad at figuring those things out myself. It takes me forever. I eventually get there, but
yeah, some things are like, oh, what I meant, sir, is to your husband. Okay, thank you. He was saying he agrees with you, and whatever that was. It's always weird, like sort of like the time delay kind of thing, and try to remember what we're talking about. But yeah, so that's what I would do for that, because it's the unconscious and your subconscious are not trying to trick you or fool you. They're doing their job. And if you're stuck, they're stuck. That's kind of the way it works. And if your dreams are stuck in a certain spot, then there's something that's stuck. It's do more rituals. I did, when I was going through in the beginning of doing a lot of self healing kind of rituals, I spent years doing the cup transformation ritual every day, and then doing things like rescuing or talking to the child within me, the abused child, just like, pretty much all that during that whole time, that was what I was dealing with. I don't do those rituals now because I've dealt with them. They don't come up. So I'm not doing those kinds of rituals, but it depends on where you're at and what's going on in your life as to what kind of rituals you need to do and what works. And I think that ritual and magic is like the missing piece of recovery from trauma. And I'm glad that we're starting to actually get that back, starting to explore that in a meaningful way, because certainly it was important in the past and should be important again. That's, processing life itself and all that happens in it is what ritual is for. So let's see. Marisol says, I only dream of schools, houses, or water beach. Well, schools mean you're learning things, right? Ian always dreams of work he hasn't done in like 15 years. So Denise says, I was a young Anasazi boy. I died in my mother's arms. I have an arrowhead birthmark on my arm. I think it's a mark from that life. That can happen. Canary arrived, says, hello, everyone. Hi, Canary. At least that's certainly one of the theories, that sometimes marks on your current body are leftover trauma from how you died in a previous life. I don't know that that's always the case, but it certainly has been the case for some people. Philippa says, just started the journaling, but thanks. I'm going to keep digging at it because I want to move on, because I used to have really great premonitions and symbolic dreams. I want to get back to them. Oh, yes, I don't blame you. That would be awesome. Writer says at Canary, hello, how are you this Sunday? Marisol says, what is the cup ritual? Okay, so one of the early videos I put up was the cup transformation ritual, and that's a way of taking the energy and the feelings that you have and that you don't want to have making you do whatever, negative things you don't want to experience, or things about yourself that you don't like, or overwhelming feelings, and putting them into a cup and then transforming them into an energy that you can use, like turning fear into courage, or anxiety into peace, or whatever. It's one of the really early videos that are there, and I think I put it in one of the lists of like regular rituals or something like that. We started doing lists, playlists. So look through the playlist. It'll have like some of the meditational practices there, like the sacred tree meditation and the healing chant and the cup transformation. And it's like, I did a whole video to explain it, so that would be a way to find out about it and see if it fits you or not. So Denise said something that was retracted. Canary says, at Ryder, stressful day, but I'm good now. Canary says, how are you? Jonathan says, Ryder, I missed you too. I'm glad you were here. I'm going to catch up on the wand video in the first 70 minutes of this. I'm looking forward to it. I've got a staff I'm going to apply what I learned to. Awesome. Yeah, I remember you were looking for a piece of wood for a staff. Tam says, any tips on how to connect with Pan, please? Go out in the woods. That's really the best way to connect to any nature spirit or nature deity or whatever, is to go out into the woods and, read up on it, find some inspiration about it, find a picture, print it up, put it on the wall, put things that make you think about Pan on your altar, find an invocation that you like, or an evocation, or a prayer, or whatever. Look for some poetry that's been written about them.
All that stuff is good for getting you in touch, and even the research of finding out what to use to get in touch is useful to help you get in touch.
Yeah, like what I did with, figuring out what I wanted to say for the invisibility ring that I was making for my granddaughter. Writer says, Canary, I'm good. Been sunbathing today. Think I may have had too much. I'm in a strange mood, a little frisky. Lipa says, thank you. I like the sound of the cup ritual. Jonathan says, Tam, there's a YouTube audio video you should listen to. Denise says, it was boring. Okay. Ryder says, Jonathan, brilliant. Let me know how that goes. I'm also working on a staff. Canary says, at Ryder, oh dear. Yeah, I think with the moon the other day, bringing up some strange energy in some people. Tam said, thank you. Jonathan says, conversations with Pan. Yes, that would be a good one to listen to. Thank you, Jonathan. We had to talk about that last time. The conversations with Pan is a good video, audio video. It's not really a video, it's an audio file. Because I don't think they didn't do a video with him. They just did the conversation video, audio thing. I've never seen a video, but I've seen pictures of him, the guy who does the conversations with Pan. What's the difference between an invocation and an evocation? Well, in means inside of yourself, so an invocation is pulling a specific energy into yourself to become one with it. An evocation is outside of yourself, so it's bringing an energy down to be in the space with you, but not in you. So that would be a quick explanation for the difference between an invocation and an evocation. And sometimes things will have parts of both. You can start off like talking outside of yourself to kind of get in touch with it, and then you want to bring the energy into yourself, and then that part's an invocation, and then the releasing later outside of you again would be an evocation. So I actually did a video on the differences between an invocation and an evocation as well. Trying to get the basics out there because there are so many things like that. Canary says, a few days ago I asked Isis for help with a problem that I've been trying to physically and magically tackle for years. Seems to be sorted now very quickly as well. I can't believe it. Awesome. That's great. Stardust says, I did my first egg cleansing the other day. I instantly got a headache after I was done, and when I went to flush it down the toilet, I literally choked on nothing. Not sure if I should do it again. Well, it sounds like maybe you should. There might be some residual stuff left over. But give it a break. I'd say wait at least a week, or wait till the next moon phase that you did it in. I'm not that familiar with the egg cleanses. I've thought of doing them.
Anytime you do a cleansing or anything, it's always good to wait a couple of days to assess the effects, because you don't always get all the effects right away. Sometimes it may take several days, so don't push things too hard.
Yeah.
In general, it's good advice.
And I was thinking like about chakra cleansings and stuff, or clearings, we had this former member who came to see me for a massage, and I found this like black gooky thing in his throat chakra, and I thought, oh, I should get rid of that, and I pulled it out, and after I pulled it out, he became a real raging asshole. It was like it unblocked his true voice, and I thought maybe that was a bad idea. I should have left it in there. It could have been there for a reason. So sometimes when you're like releasing things, you can have an adverse reaction because you don't necessarily know why it was the way it was. And, so sometimes it's like in just health stuff, like you might have a pain that's trying to warn you about something. You get rid of the pain, and then it doesn't warn you about something, and then you end up in a worst case scenario because you got rid of the pain that was trying to get you to go somewhere to take care of it. It's tricky. It's like always a balancing act. Writer says, that's awesome at Canary. Canary says, yeah, it's really been a real life. I've asked for help from different entities before multiple times. I only felt the need to ask her once, and I dreamt I was talking to her last night too. Yeah, I have a strong connection to Isis as well. It's interesting. There's so many different energies that are out there. And, things switch and change around as we go. So, Mary says, I went to meditation the other day and I felt an energy shoot up from my feet up to my head. I've never felt anything like that before. Could that be related to Kundalini? Absolutely. That would definitely be related to Kundalini. That's the pathway that goes from the earth energy up through the spine to the crown chakra and out into the universal mind connection, divine light, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, and it is interesting when it happens, and it can be rather startling the first time. I actually had it once where it went up really, really slow up my spine, and it cracked and moved all of the bones in my spine as it went. I could hear them moving, and then when it got up into my head, my skull plates were moving and shifting, and they were also cracking. That one was sort of bizarre and unexpected. But usually it's like an intelligent form of energy, so you don't have to worry about what it's doing to you, although sometimes you can maybe accidentally hurt yourself if you let it go too far. Mary says, it was so strong, but I don't know what to do now. Haha, my face moved. Yeah, it will move things around. So, ground yourself to keep things from going too fast. There was who was it, Milarepa, or no, the other guy who had to eat meat in order to slow down the Kundalini. Gopi Krishna. I always get those.
He was like in 1918 or something. Milarepa was like
ancient past.
Yes.
I just, names popping in my head. Anyway, read up on it, I guess. Mary Canary says, yep, I've experienced that too. Definitely sounds like Kundalini. Ooh, Mary says. Yep. What is that thing that looks like a pumpkin with a face on it? I see that a lot. Jonathan says, I've done the egg cleansing a couple of times. Your response worries me. It's like something doesn't want you to cleanse. Larva, vampire, or something. If it was you, I would double down, do everything. Well, if it was me, I would wait and see what happens next. Canary says, I think that there's been a rise of people that have been activating their Kundalini. Yes, there definitely seems to be in the West.
And I recommend for that, even though it doesn't go with the Western notions much, I recommend invoking the goddess Kundalini to guide your development.
Right, because that is the name of one of the goddesses, Goddess Kundalini. Writer says, started Qigong the other day and something similar happened on the first movement. It was like fire shot up from my feet, up my legs, and through my body. I also thought Kundalini. Yep, I call it serpent fire for a reason. And we all have it. It's in there. We're all born with it, wrapped around our tailbone. And not everyone has it happen during their lifetime or during 1,000 lifetimes. It's like you just don't know for sure. Canary says, I will do that. Thank you. I didn't know that. Mary said, thank you, Ian. You're welcome. Yeah, we're glad that we can sit here and do this stuff together. It's kind of nice. Getting Ian in here to be involved in the live process has been a slow building upwards thing, and so it's always nice to have his view of things. Get more than one kind of view of what's going on and stuff. One of our friends keeps saying is like, she thinks it's so cool that we just sit and talk about this kind of stuff. These are the kind of conversations we have all the time. And it's these conversations that have emptied out restaurants in the past before COVID.
Yep, people get freaked out so easy sometimes.
I know, you talk about stuff and they're like, oh my God, what the hell are they talking about? Let's get out of here quick. Let's move. Get away.
If they don't like it, then they shouldn't listen.
That's right. Don't eavesdrop. We try to be, conscious when we're doing stuff like that and try not to freak people out. But
we're not rowdy and loud. So.
No, we're just talking about things that are in depth and that people usually don't want to face about reality and how it works. Ryder says, I love these conversations. Yes. Thank you. So do we. It's like there's some people that you can just talk to and you don't have to worry about what you're saying, how it's going to be perceived, how they're going to interpret it, because there's a clarity about the conversation. And when you can find someone that you can talk to like that, it's just a relief. I have several people that I can talk to. Obviously, Ian is one of them. I have a couple of friends I can talk to like that. I can talk to my daughter and my granddaughter that way. And so it's a rare and precious commodity, because most people are just projecting onto you and not hearing everything you're saying. That's so common. It's like you say one thing and then they hear a trigger word or a trigger phrase, and then from that moment on they stop listening, and then they're off in their own head, and then they're waiting for you to shut the hell up so they can get in there and say their piece. And then that's not a conversation. That's sort of more of a battleground to see who can get what words out in what order. And so learning how to listen is part of the process of having a really good conversation, and then asking leading questions of people and genuinely wanting to know where they're at and what's happening with them, and being curious and stuff. And that definitely describes me, generally speaking. So, yay.
And I'm just bad with people, so.
Ryder says, those people are missing out. Canary says, it's probably because you're not the stereotypical crazy person. That is why it freaks people out so much. Well, yeah. I mean, when we first got together, everyone said we were going to start fighting soon. Eventually, the honeymoon phase would be over. And we're like, why?
They were saying that like 5, 6
months in,
no,
and then 5 years, and
yeah.
then 10 years, and it's just like, it's like, well, when is this fighting thing going to start? Why do we have to do it? We don't have to do it. We can just have a conversation. We can disagree on certain things and not get into a tiff. It's not an ego issue, or, it's like we don't have to prove ourselves to one another. We respect each other for who we are and our opinions, and it gives people room to grow and change. If you can't accept someone for where they're at, there's no way for them to change, because then they're fighting your view of who they are.
We do agree on an extraordinary amount of things, though, compared to most people.
Well, it's true. How we manage to find each other is like, it baffles us on a regular basis. And we're very, very grateful that we found one another. So Philippa says, someone who had been constantly horrible to me reached out and tried to touch me, apparently trying to be kind, and felt my energy shoot outwards from my core, and it shot out in a spherical way. Interesting. Denise says, you are so honest and down to earth. How could we not love this? Well, you'd be surprised. There are a lot of people who don't. Jonathan said, well said, Siofra. Philippa says, like a bubble, and the person shot backwards from me, looked shocked, and walked away. Ooh. So that sounds like that was a very energetic, like, get the hell out of my space kind of reaction, and maybe you guys are allergic to each other energetically. And they got the message. They're like, okay, I should not touch that person, especially without permission. What the hell is that for? With what the heck? So Canary says, if I heard people at a table having these conversations, I'd probably rudely pull out a chair to their table and invite myself in. Actually, I had that happen at a food cupboard before COVID, just before COVID hit, actually. And I was going to a new food bank I'd never been to before. And I was sitting, waiting and stuff like that. And this gentleman sat in front of me, and we started talking, and he had a staff. So I knew it was a staff. I started talking to him about that. He recognized what I was doing. We were having this great conversation. Then this other woman overheard us, and she broke in, and then she sort of took over the conversation because she wanted me to go to her house and check the energy of her house. It was like, okay. yeah, that was interesting. And I did go to her house and check the energy of her house. She's a local person, not too far away from here. But it was one of those things, and it was what was the church it was at? It was one of the evangelical churches that Jesus is coming kind of thing, signs all over the place. And so there's all these people, the people who run the food bank are like members of the church, and I could see their discomfort level getting bigger and bigger and bigger as I was sitting there talking and people moving slightly away from our table. I was just like, okay. But we ignored them, because sometimes that's just the way it is. Canary says, he, or writer says, he at Canary. Gnomes is here says, if I don't want to be bothered, I just put an aura of danger or something I can only describe as my spirit tiger growling around me. It has made people veer away from me when on a walk at night. Awesome. That sounds like good protection. I have a bear and a black panther that sometimes go walk with me. And of course, the Garuda likes to come out every so often and put his wings around me and make a loud noise if he feels I'm in danger. Gnomes is here says, I often walk alone outside at night. It's a defensive measure. Is it bad to do that? No. I don't see any reason why it's bad. Philippa says, I use this energy now to cast a protective bubble before I sleep because I'm always too tired to cast a circle. Well, isn't that the same thing as casting a circle? A bubble? I mean, it depends on your view of a circle. If you're doing a circle on a regular basis, then it takes less energy each time you do it if you leave it up. Just saying. So you can do it in different ways. I sometimes do it like in my mind on the mental plane or in the astral plane. Sometimes I do it physically. But and sometimes all I do is go like this. Go around the directions, go up through the akasha, and make a bubble and go like that, and it shoots out to the edges of the property. So you can kind of program those things with hand gestures after a period of time. You don't have to actually do the whole thing. So that can help save time. Canary says at Ryder, I'm normally very reserved, but I don't often get to have these conversations, hence why this is one of my favorite channels, so I don't think I'd be able to help myself. Well, and that is perfectly okay. That's why we have this and why we're doing it this way. Canary, Ryder says at Canary, I'm always up for these conversations. I love to listen and have a lot to share, so if you ever want to, I'm around most of the time. Okay, guys, so it's been an hour and 32 minutes, so I guess it's time for me to get going here and hopefully take care of getting better and stopping all the wonderful pain in my hand.
Thank you all for keeping our Sunday interesting.
Yes, we look forward to this as well. We never know what kind of questions we're going to get, and it helps to keep us on our toes. So, is it bad to growl at negative energy as a warning if it doesn't work?
So.
I don't think so either. I growl at cats if they're getting out of hand. Growling is a universal sign of, like, back off. So, okay, guys. I better stop, or I'll start answering more questions, because we're really chatty today, and that's awesome. So, bye, guys. See you next week, and we'll see what we come up with.
Blessed be.
Blessed be to everybody.